Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I like to cake. Today I'm going to show you how to make a cake based off of the book Blueberries for Sal. This book features a little girl named Sal who goes blueberry picking and encounters some bears on the way. The first thing we're going to do is a buttercream transfer for the character Sal's head. A buttercream transfer is exactly what it sounds like. It's a great way to transfer an image onto your cake, and it's made out of buttercream. Now I'm going to get a little technical into the details of a buttercream transfer. I think this is really important, but if you already know what you're doing or you don't want to listen to the details, please feel free to skip ahead to about the 2-minute mark. To make a buttercream transfer of an image, you need to print it out to the size you want it to be on your cake, but before you print it out, make sure you flip the image on the computer so that it's actually a mirror image of what you want the finished product to look like. This is especially important if your transfer involves numbers or letters, because in the end we're going to flip this upside down onto the cake. The last thing you want is, after all that work, to have backwards letters or words on your cake. When you're piping the different layers of the transfer, keep in mind again that we will be flipping this upside down onto the cake, and then we'll peel the parchment paper off because that'll be the smooth side and that's what we want facing up. So in order to do this, we're going to construct the buttercream transfer backwards. Basically, how I try to explain this is to think about how you might paint this image onto a canvas. You'd probably start with the background color, then do some highlights on top, then those finer lines or outlines on top of that. So for our transfer, we're going to go in the opposite order. First, we'll do the finer lines and the outlines, which is black in this case, and then we'll do the highlight color, which is yellow in this case, and finally we'll do the background color, which for this image is white. So here I have my image printed out and I taped some parchment paper on top. I definitely recommend taping it down to your image so you don't have to worry about it accidentally moving while you're piping or anything like that. Following along with what I said before, I'm going to do the black parts of the image first. This definitely took some patience, but I think the end product was worth it. In between each layer or each color, you want to put this in the freezer so that it becomes hard, so when you put the next color on top, it doesn't mess anything up from the previous layer. Now we're going to do the yellow. And finally, we're going to do the white. When we flip this over onto the cake, you will be able to see some of the lines from the piping. What I try to do to get around this is I go over the back with a flat offset spatula, applying a little bit of pressure to try and smooth out those lines. Now we want to put this in the freezer. Since it needs to be well frozen before we put it on the cake, I usually do my buttercream transfers 1 to 2 days ahead of time. This next step you can also do 1 to 2 days ahead. We're going to make the chocolate bear silhouettes for the side of the cake. This is a similar process to the buttercream transfer, except we use tempered chocolate. I'm not going to include the details of tempering chocolate in this video, but I might do that in a future video. I have my mirror image photos printed out. Then I place an acetate strip on top of it, and acetate is basically just a smooth plastic. You could use wax paper or parchment paper, you just might not get as smooth of a finished product. Then you just pipe your chocolate out to make your silhouettes. Okay, so the lighting for the rest of this video and some of the camera angles may not be the best. This was one of my first videos I filmed, so I apologize. Please bear with me as I'm still learning how to do this. Okay, cake assembly time. So first you want to put a little bit of frosting on your cake board and spread it out. That'll just help the cake stick to the board so it doesn't move while we're working on it. Then place one of your cake layers on the cake board and pipe or spread out your filling. I'm just using regular American buttercream frosting here. Then we're going to repeat this process with our second layer of cake and frosting. I like to put the last layer of cake on upside down. This helps give a straighter edge on the top of your cake. Now it's time for the crumb coat. This is just an initial thin layer of frosting which will help seal in all the crumbs so that they don't come off when we do our final layer of frosting. Since I'm going to have blue frosting on the top of my cake, I'm using blue frosting for the crumb coat on top. Once the crumb coat is finished, you want to place your cake in the fridge or the freezer for just a few minutes so that it can get cold and hard on the outside. Now once we take the cake back out, we'll put a thicker layer of frosting on top. This is the final layer of frosting. And I wanted 2 colors on the side of the cake. I want blue on the bottom and white on the top. So first we take our blue frosting and pipe that on the bottom half. And since I want the top to be blue, I'll go ahead and pipe that out while I have the blue icing out. Then we'll do the white frosting on the top half. Now we're going to smooth out the icing. So here I'm first using an offset spatula, and then I'm going to use an acrylic icing scraper. But you can use anything with a straight edge really, like a ruler or a bench scraper if it's a shorter cake. It's very important that you keep your smoother straight while turning the cake. This helps to make sure that we keep that clean line between the white and the blue frosting. You also don't want to apply too much pressure. We're just smoothing out the icing. We want to try and remove as little frosting as possible. Some of it will inevitably come off, so just scrape that off with your smoother and continue. Once it's all smooth, there may be some holes or gaps here and there. If that happens, just add a little frosting to those places and smooth it out again. Now we're going to smooth out the top and just try and join the edges of the top and the sides of the cake. Here I'm just cleaning up the edges of the cake board a little bit. Some of that frosting got spread out, so I just use a clean paper towel and wipe some of it up. Okay, it's finally time to add all those decorations that we worked on earlier. First, we'll take the chocolate bears and put them around the side of the cake. I only made 4 chocolate bears and I placed them mostly on the front of the cake since no one really pays attention to the back, but you could always make more bears and line the whole cake with them. Now it's time for the exciting part, our buttercream transfer. This part is pretty easy. You just take it out of the freezer, peel off the parchment paper, and place it on the cake. Buttercream does melt pretty easily, so you want to work quickly here because it starts melting in your hands almost immediately. The last decoration for this cake is the blueberries. You could absolutely just use some real blueberries and place them on top, but I decided to make these out of frosting. You want a number 3 or number 5 round piping tip to pipe out small balls of frosting. Some tips here for piping is to make sure your frosting tip is not too close to the cake. You also want to slowly increase the pressure as you get to the widest part of the ball, and then decrease pressure as you lift up to finish the ball. It's okay if they have tips sticking up at this point because we're actually going to cover that up with more tips to make the blueberry shape. This part might be hard to see due to my poor filming, but I'll try to explain it as best I can. So we're going to pipe the top bit of the blueberry that basically looks like a tiny pointy flower. You'll want to switch out your piping tip for a smaller round one. I'm using a number 1 here, or you can use a number 2. Then to pipe the pointy bits, you just pipe a dot and continue applying some pressure as you lift off, and this creates the point. So you want to do 4 or 5 of these to finish each blueberry top. And that is our Blueberries for Sal cake. Thanks for watching!